All right, now that your sanding sticks are made, you at least have 4 grits of sanding sticks, our 220, 320, 400, 600. You have your files ready and out. You have your large file, large half round file, your small needle nose files. Everything's cut out in your pendant, earring, money clip, whatever it may be. You're going to pull that piece of paper off of your design, off your metal. So I just use my fingernail and kind of pull back a little bit. If you're having trouble, you can always grab like the scribe or something to poke up a corner of your paper and then just peel it right off. This is one of the reasons why we use rubber cement and we don't use Elmer's glue or any other kind of glues that are real tacky. The rubber cement just pulls evenly right off when you're all done if everything went well. You can throw that piece of paper away. So now we have, oops, upside down, my diamond. Ah. Okay, so first I want to see if I can get a file in there. You're going to pick your file depending on the shape and area that you're trying to get into. So I'm going to try and get in these little corners. And if you have it, it's really helpful to have a ring clamp. It's called a ring clamp, but it has multiple purposes and functions. So I like to use it to hold on to pieces when I'm sanding. So let's say I want to do the outside first. Instead of doing the inside and trying to find a file to fit in there, I'm going to do the outside first. So I'm going to put my design in the ring clamp, squeeze it in there nice and tight. And I'm going to take my big flat file, big half round file, and you're going to start out, let me zoom in here a little bit more. Use your bench pin to brace yourself. Always never be filing or standing in the air. It will be uneven, it's awkward, you're going to end up messing up your piece. Always have everything braced down. So if you're holding it in your hand, you're still going to use the bench pin to hold your hands down on. But otherwise, if you have the ring clamp, press it in that V and then start the file. I try to use the entire length of the file just as I did with the saw blade. So starting at the top and pushing. Files work best in one direction by pushing. When you pull back, you can't really see what you're doing. It's clogging the file. Traditionally, it's just always said never to go back and forth because it will clog the file and you could possibly ruin the teeth. But for the most part, I'm telling you not to do it because you want consistent file marks. So we're going to press and try to keep it nice and flat. I'm using the flat side of that so that I get a nice flat edge. I'm going to flip it, turn it the other way, and go the other direction. And you can see I'm starting at one corner, and I'll zoom in here. You can see that I'm starting one side of the diamond and pushing and working my way to the other. If you had a big lump, like let's say your sawing was really uneven, you're like right in the center there was a big bump, I would focus in on that bump for a minute, file, 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 and as soon as you flatten it out just enough, then start consistently hitting the entire surface, okay? And I'm going to flip it this way, and I'm going to file the ends there. And I'm just cleaning these up a little bit. And it will make that horrible, you want to try to avoid that horrible screeching sound. That chattering. And I'm not going crazy with the filing. I'm just trying to make a nice even surface. Get rid of some of my saw marks. Alright, so that's the diamond zip bar. Those edges look pretty good. Because I'm also going to be hitting it with sandpaper, so I don't need to, go at it with the file like crazy unless your lines are really uneven. That's when you really need to be filing a nice flat surface. So I'm just going to hit all the other two edges, and I'm flipping it this way. That way my file marks are consistent and even. I'm also using the bigger file for this because if I use these little files, I could use the little files, but you know, they're not going to cover as much surface. I could do this. I mean, it's okay. But if I can use the bigger half round file, I will use that over the smaller needle nose file. So I'm flipping to the last side. Just wedge that in there so it's nice and tight. Flip it this way. Make sure you don't file your lines too thin. This diamond has, you know, just so much space between the outer edge and the cutouts. And you want to make sure that if aesthetically, if the lines all need to be the same width, that you're not filing away too much. Okay, that looks pretty darn good. Put my ring clamp off to there for a second. So there's the outside of my diamond. Nice crisp edges, everything's even, okay? All right, now I'm gonna try to get in here with some files. So I'm gonna use the triangular file. See if I can get into any spaces with that. They do make tinier files, so if you're wondering, if you have them, great. If you don't, you gotta work with what you got. So I'm going to attempt to get in there so I can get in some of these spaces. I'm not going to be able to get in all of them. And I file from just the front. If it's a piece that reverses, like it moves and you can see both sides, then you might have to focus in on filing both sides. But really, I try to just focus in on the front that I'm filing. And I'm going to go at it. This is a really small, trying to get at those corners. Remember that if you're filing with something that has a edge that's going to cut into the surface, make sure you're careful not to be cutting into the opposite surface. So if I'm trying to file here, if I'm filing right here, I want to be careful that I'm not hitting this edge or this edge and cutting into it, because that's when things can go, you know, start getting messy when you're not paying attention to your filing and you start hitting the other edge. So I try to, you're just pushing and pulling back, lifting up and pulling back. So I'm pushing, and this does take a little bit of patience and some time. And I'm just cleaning up my edges, flip it upside down. Use your bench pin to brace yourself on. That's why I like holding it in the ring clamp too, because it gives you a little bit of the ability to move it in different directions. That would be awkward to be holding with your hand. And I'm going to show you my own little trick. If you don't have files that are small enough to get in some of these areas in a second. So, and you want to make sure that you're using, oh here, I'm going to try the square file. Maybe that's a little bit smaller. You want to make sure that you're, see that square? Make sure you're using the right file for the right shape. So if it is concave, you probably need either the half round or the round file to get in there. Concave meaning it dips down, so you need to be able to file, you know, inwards with that half round or the round side. But if it's something with a straight edge or convex, then you need to have a flat surface and just go along with the surface. You don't want to be using a rounded file for something that is curved in or concave. I'm going to switch back, and you know, try a couple different files, see which one, like if you're having a hard time finding which one works, just try a couple different files, see which one makes the most sense, and you're able to get in on that area without messing up other parts of it. And I have smaller files in my own personal studio or my own equipment, but for my students' sake, I'm not going to use them. For all of, you know, for those of you who are watching that do not have access to them, it defeats the purpose of showing you with tools that you don't have available to you. So, all right, I don't think I'm going to be able to get in any of those other surfaces with those files. I got in all the larger parts, you know, the majority of them that I could, and cleaned it up. It's not looking too bad. But if I want to get back into some of those areas, and I want them, if you're somebody who is a perfectionist like myself, you really want to try to figure out a way to get back into those areas. So I'm going to rethread the saw blade into the openings of the diamond. Remember to hold on to it when you're bringing it back up. And I'm going to go at a really sharp angle, and I'm going to use the saw blade as, again, I showed it in the sawing video, but use it as a chisel. And I'm just shaving off that overhang edge that's kind of making it look a little wonky or not crisp enough. I'm going to go a real sharp angle. And you can go this way. I'm going to flip it back around this way. Okay. Now I finished that one. That one looks good at the middle part. And I'm just going to do this and go through each and every one of them. And straighten them all back up. I am not at this point, I'm not cutting into the diamond. I am just going at a very sharp angle and making those lines crisper. So here's an area right here where when I did the hole punch with the Euro punch, it kind of pushed the metal in a little bit. So, and it's making it look a little funky. So I'm gonna just straighten it out, and I can see a little bit of that dot that I was talking about earlier, the drill hole dot or the metal punch dot that happens. So I want to get rid of that. The fun part about jewelry is trying to make things look magical. Like, how did they make that happen so that you don't see how the process happened? It looks like just magically appeared. At least that's what I think. All right, cleaning that edge up. So you can see I'm going through each and every one of the negative spaces of the diamond. Just going right back through. Just having a little bit of patience, and the end goal is always to have something that you're really proud of, that when you show people, you're like, oh, look what look at the thing I made. And have them, excited for you, and not talk about the flaws in it, not worry about what didn't go right, or focus in on the things that you don't like about it, but try to fix those things and make them look, the best you can. And I will be, I guess it's not really being honest, but when I mess up on my own personal work, and it does happen from time to time, even though I've been doing this forever, if I mess up and I cut through a line, or I make a line too thin, I scrap it and I start over. I know that's harder to have students do when you have a lot of work already on your plate, but I just, I can't put something out into the world that I feel like isn't the best representation of my work. So if I were to cut through the side of this diamond, and I didn't have a way to solder it, and like I didn't have a way to fix it, I would just scrap it and start over. Metal is, I feel like metal is pretty forgiving to a certain extent, because you can, if you mess up a line, sometimes you can hide it by making another line thinner, change up the design a little bit, but sometimes metal is not forgiving. And if you don't have the tools and equipment to fix it, then you're left to just scrapping it and starting over. All right. And again, this is always like a tricky, so this is not traditionally how we're taught. It's just my technique, not just my technique. I know other jewelers that do it, but it's what I do to get in those like really hard spots to get into with files, especially if you just don't have them. And I'm not cutting back into the surface. I'm just using it to scrape away. Just kind of going at really hard angles and scraping away that top of that design. All right, I'm going to finish this up and then come back and show you sanding. All right. Thank you.